This road was never meant to be found. It does not appear on maps. It does not end where it begins. Every mile strips something from you: time, memory, identity. Families have driven it for generations without knowing they were already dead to the world they left behind. They called it a shortcut. They called it abandoned. But roads don't disappear. They wait. And once you enter, the road doesn't let you leave.
Chapter 1. Chapter 1. You shouldn't have taken this road. The road appeared the way mistakes often do, quietly, without announcement, as if it had always been there. The family had been driving for hours beneath a sky that never quite decided whether it wanted to storm or clear. The clouds hung low and bruised, pressing down on the trees that lined the highway like a ceiling slowly descending. Inside the car, the air smelled faintly of old coffee and warm plastic, the residue of too many miles and too little rest. Daniel drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw tight, eyes flicking between the road and the dashboard clock. They were already late. That was the problem. Being late made every decision feel urgent, and urgency had a way of dulling instincts that normally screamed. In the passenger seat, Mara leaned forward, scrolling through her phone. The GPS flickered, recalculating again and again, the blue line stuttering like a nervous heartbeat. "There's nothing here," she said finally. "No signal. It just stops." From the back seat came a soft sigh. Ellie, their daughter, had her forehead pressed to the glass, watching the forest slide past in long, repeating shadows. Beside her, Jonah kicked at the back of Daniel's seat, bored, restless, unaware that boredom was a luxury about to expire. Then Daniel saw it. A narrow road branching off to the right, barely wider than a driveway. No sign, no name, just a break in the trees where the asphalt darkened and dipped, as if the forest itself had parted to make room. He slowed without realizing it. "That wasn't there before," Mara said. Daniel frowned. "I think it was." She looked at him. He could hear the doubt in her silence. "It wasn't on the map," she said carefully. He glanced again at the GPS. The screen showed nothing but empty green. No roads, no alternatives, just a blinking arrow floating in nowhere. But the road felt familiar. That was the unsettling part. Daniel couldn't explain it, only that something about the curve of it, the way it disappeared into the trees, tugged at a memory he couldn't place. Like a childhood street glimpsed in a dream, like déjà vu without context. "It wasn't on the map," he said, repeating the words as if testing them, "but it feels familiar." Ellie turned from the window. "Are we stopping?" "Shortcut," Daniel said, the word arriving fully formed before he decided to say it. "Probably an old access road. Shaves some time." Mara hesitated. She always did, right before trusting him. "Daniel, we're already behind," he said, "and the highway's backed up. We'll rejoin further down." The road waited. No wind stirred the trees beside it. The leaves hung unnaturally still, glossy and dark, as if lacquered. The entrance was clean, too clean. No gravel, no warning signs, no tire tracks leading in or out. It didn't look abandoned. It looked preserved. Jonah leaned forward. "Cool, it's like a tunnel." Daniel turned the wheel. The moment the tires crossed onto the narrow asphalt, the air changed. The temperature dipped, just enough to raise goosebumps along Mara's arms. The forest closed in, branches knitting overhead, until the sky became a thin gray ribbon. The road sloped gently downward. "It's darker," Ellie whispered. Daniel flicked on the headlights. The beams cut through the shadows, illuminating bark and leaves too close to the road, as if the forest were leaning in to listen. They drove in silence for minutes. No intersections, no houses, no signs of life. The radio crackled once, then dissolved into static, a low hiss that sounded almost like breathing. Mara glanced back at the way they'd come. The entrance was gone. Not blocked, not hidden by a curve. Gone entirely, replaced by more road stretching behind them, identical to the path ahead. Smooth, unbroken. "Daniel," she said softly. He checked the mirrors. His stomach tightened. "It's just the trees. We turned. It'll open up." But the road didn't turn. It continued straight, then straight again. The same subtle slope, the same suffocating canopy. "Didn't we pass that tree already?" Ellie frowned. Daniel swallowed. A massive oak loomed on the left, its trunk split by a pale scar shaped vaguely like a lightning bolt. "No," he said too quickly. "They all look the same." But 5 minutes later, the same oak appeared again. And again. The clock on the dashboard ticked forward, but the light outside never changed. The sky remained suspended in late afternoon, frozen in a perpetual not quite evening. Mara's voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. "Daniel, stop the car." He did. The engine idled, the sound oddly muted as though absorbed by the trees. When Daniel stepped out, the smell hit him first. Damp earth, rot, and something faintly metallic beneath it. The road beneath his shoes felt warm, unnaturally warm. He walked a few steps forward. The asphalt bore faint impressions, shallow depressions that might have been cracks or footprints smoothed over by time. The road wasn't just a path. It was responsive. It waited when they waited. It stretched when they moved. It did not care where they wanted to go, only that they kept going. Behind him, Jonah asked, "Dad, why does it feel like we're not moving, even when we are?" Daniel opened his mouth to answer. And that was when he understood the truth he would spend the rest of the journey trying to deny. This road did not respond to direction. It responded to intention. And they had intended to escape being late. The road, obliging in its own way, had decided to keep them forever.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. The road wasn't like this before. They drove again. Not because they agreed it was the right thing to do, but because stopping felt worse. The engine hummed softly, a steady, comforting sound that suggested normality, motion, progress. Daniel focused on that sound, clung to it the way a drowning man clings to driftwood. The road slid beneath the tires in a smooth, obedient line. No bumps, no cracks, no visible damage at all. Too perfect. Mara kept glancing at the clock on the dashboard. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The numbers advanced, but something about the passage of time felt hollow, as if the seconds weren't stacking the way they should. Outside, the forest remained unchanged. The same density, the same angle of light filtering through the branches, the same smell, wet leaves and old soil, layered with that faint metallic tang that lingered at the back of the throat. Ellie leaned forward from the back seat. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Didn't we already pass this bend?" Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. Ahead, the road curved gently to the left, skirting a cluster of pines whose roots broke the surface like knuckles pressing through skin. A pale rock sat at the edge of the asphalt, streaked with moss. He was sure he remembered it. No, these roads just wind. They rounded the bend. A minute later, the road curved left again. Same pines, same rock, same shallow dip where the asphalt darkened as if permanently damp. They had already passed this bend. Mara didn't say anything at first. She pressed her lips together, eyes scanning the trees, the sky, the mirrors. Denial had always been her reflex, not blind denial, but cautious, hopeful skepticism. If she didn't name the fear, maybe it would stay hypothetical. This area probably has a lot of similar terrain. Logging roads, maybe. They're designed to look uniform. Jonah snorted. "Jonah," she warned. "I'm just saying, it's the same. Even the scratch on that sign." There was a sign. Daniel's pulse jumped.
He hadn't noticed it before, or maybe he had, and his mind had quietly discarded the memory. A narrow green mile marker stood on the right shoulder, half swallowed by vines. White numbers were stenciled onto it, faded but legible. 17. They passed it in silence. 2 minutes later, another marker appeared. 17. Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck. "That doesn't mean anything," he said quickly. "They reuse numbers on access roads sometimes." Mara turned to him. "Do they?" He didn't answer. The sky darkened. Not gradually, the way evening crept in back home, but all at once, as if someone had dimmed a switch. Shadows thickened between the trees, pooling at their bases. The strip of sky overhead narrowed further, the gray deepening toward blue-black. "It's too early for this," Ellie whispered. Daniel checked the clock again. Late afternoon. It should have been brighter, not darker. They drove on. The road began to feel longer, not in distance exactly, but in effort. The engine seemed to labor despite maintaining speed, the engine straining just slightly, like it was pulling more weight than before. Mara rubbed her arms. "It's cold." Daniel nodded, though he hadn't felt the temperature change himself. Or maybe he had and had ignored it. Another bend. The same bend. They had already passed this bend. Daniel laughed, sharp and sudden. "Okay, fine. It's weird. But weird isn't dangerous." The laughter didn't help. It echoed too loudly in the confined space, bouncing off the windows and falling flat. Ellie hugged her backpack closer. "Why does it feel like we're driving in place?" Jonah pressed his face to the glass. "The trees are moving." They were. Not swaying, there was no wind, but shifting, subtly repositioning themselves. A birch that had been on the left now stood on the right. A fallen log that had leaned parallel to the road was suddenly perpendicular, blocking a narrow animal trail that hadn't been there before. Small changes, plausible ones, the kind the brain could explain away if it wanted to. And Daniel wanted to. He turned up the radio. Static answered him, thick and heavy, threaded with faint pops and murmurs that almost formed words. He turned the dial. More static, a brief flash of a voice, too distorted to identify, then nothing. He turned it off. They passed another mile marker. 17. Mara finally said what none of them wanted to hear. "This road wasn't like this before." Daniel shook his head. "We didn't notice, that's all. You're tired, I'm tired. Our brains are filling in gaps." "But the sky." "Cloud cover," he snapped. She flinched. He hadn't meant to raise his voice, but fear had a way of leaking out sideways. For a moment, things felt almost normal again. The road straightened. The trees pulled back slightly, allowing more light through. The oppressive closeness eased. Relief washed through the car in a fragile wave. Maybe it really was just stress. Then the bend appeared again. Same curve, same pines, same moss-streaked rock. They had already passed this bend. The road stretched on, patient and unbothered, as if allowing them one last chance to convince themselves nothing was wrong. And denial, Daniel realized too late, was the first thing the road took from you. Because once you admitted it was changing, you had to accept that it was doing so on purpose.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Night changes everything. Night arrived without warning. There was no sunset, no slow bleed of orange into purple, no lingering gold on the treetops. One moment the forest sat in its familiar gray half-light, and the next, darkness folded over the road like a lid closing on a box. Ellie noticed first. "Dad," she said quietly, "it's night." Daniel glanced at the clock. Early evening. Impossible. He looked up through the windshield and felt his chest tighten. The headlights now carved narrow tunnels through the dark,
their beams swallowed quickly by the trees. Beyond that thin cone of light, the world no longer existed. The road ahead seemed longer. Not wider, not steeper, longer. The stretch illuminated by the headlights no longer felt proportional to the car's speed. They drove and drove, yet the same ribbon of asphalt remained stubbornly distant, as if the road were unspooling ahead of them faster than they could follow. "This isn't right," Mara murmured. The words sounded different at night, louder, riskier. The forest had changed its sound, too. During the day, if it could still be called that, there had been a muted hush, like breath held. Now there was nothing at all. No insects, no birds, not even wind. Silence heavy and intentional. Daniel swallowed and adjusted his grip on the wheel. His knuckles ached, though he didn't remember tightening his hands. "We'll stop," he said. "Let it pass, whatever this is." He slowed, easing the car to the shoulder. The moment the tire stopped moving, the silence deepened. Jonah exhaled. "That's worse." Mara nodded. "Don't turn the engine off." Daniel hadn't planned to. The hum of the engine felt like the only thing tethering them to something real. Minutes passed, then more. The darkness didn't thin. The sky didn't lighten. The trees did not shift or sway. The road ahead remained exactly the same length, unchanged, unmoved by their pause. Ellie's voice trembled. "Is it supposed to be this dark?" "No," Mara said softly. "It's not." Daniel started the car moving again. As soon as they drove forward, the road stretched. The headlights chased it, but it never quite arrived. The sensation was subtle, but undeniable, like walking toward a horizon that kept stepping back. They passed a mile marker. Daniel braced himself. 17. "Of course," he muttered. Jonah leaned forward. "Didn't we already pass like 5 of those?" "Yes," Mara said, "we did." This time no one tried to explain it away. The road curved and didn't. The bend appeared, but instead of turning, the asphalt elongated, the curve pulling outward, smoothing itself into a longer, shallower arc. The trees shifted to accommodate it, trunks sliding across the forest floor without sound, roots rearranging beneath the soil. The road was reshaping itself, not abruptly, not violently, casually, as if this was what it had always done at night. Mara pressed her palm to the window. The glass was cold, almost icy now. "Daniel, I think it's changing when we look away." He didn't answer. He was watching the road breathe. It wasn't dramatic, just a subtle rise and fall beneath the headlights, like the slow expansion of a sleeping chest. The asphalt shimmered faintly, reflecting light in uneven patches. Ellie whimpered, "I want morning." Daniel glanced at the clock again. Hours had passed. Outside, the night stayed the same. They drove on until exhaustion settled into their bones. The road offered no landmarks now, no rocks, no distinctive trees. Everything had blurred into repetition, the forest stripped of individuality. At some point, Jonah fell asleep, his head lolling against the door. Ellie followed soon after, clutching her backpack like a life preserver. Mara stayed awake. She watched the road carefully, noting how it subtly corrected itself whenever Daniel seemed to make progress. Speeding up made it longer, slowing down made it steeper, stopping froze the darkness in place. "The road doesn't want us to rest," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "It wants us tired." The realization settled between them, heavy and cold. They drove on, and on, and on. Morning never came where it should. The sky lightened eventually, but only a shade, a sickly gray that offered no warmth, no clarity. The darkness receded just enough to make them hope, then stalled. Ellie woke and asked if it was morning. Daniel didn't answer. Ahead, the road finally narrowed, funneling them toward a distant shape barely visible through the haze. Something solid, something different. Relief surged, dangerous, unwelcome. As they drew closer, Daniel saw what it was, an abandoned car. It sat half on the shoulder, half on the road, its doors hanging open, its interior gutted by time or animals or something worse. The metal looked old, warped, as if it had been there far longer than any car should survive. Mara whispered, "Someone else made it this far." Daniel slowed, heart pounding. As they passed, Ellie pointed at the asphalt beneath the car. There were impressions in the road, not tire marks, handprints, pressed deep into the surface, fingers splayed, reaching forward, as if whoever had been there last had tried to crawl away while the road softened beneath them. The road, Daniel realized, was most alive at night, and night, it seemed, had only just begun.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Others have been here longer than you. They came upon the first car just after the light failed again. Not darkness, true night had already claimed the road, but a dull dimming, as if the world had lost interest in being seen. The headlights weakened, their beams scattering instead of cutting cleanly ahead. Daniel slowed instinctively. The car sat crooked across the shoulder, its rear end sunken slightly into the asphalt. Rust blistered its doors like a disease left untreated. One tire had melted into the road, the rubber stretched thin and shiny, as though it had softened and sagged, while the car remained perfectly still. "No," Mara whispered. "No, no, no." The driver's door hung open. Inside, the seats were empty. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just a wallet on the passenger seat, its leather warped and cracked, and a child's shoe on the floor, small enough that Ellie sucked in a sharp breath when she saw it. Daniel parked a few yards ahead, hazard lights blinking weakly. "We shouldn't stop," he said, even as he unbuckled his seatbelt. "But someone might still be," Mara began. He shook his head. If anyone was here, it wasn't recently. The smell confirmed it the moment he stepped out. Rot. Damp, sweet, unmistakable. The odor of things that had been left too long in places they didn't belong. The road beneath his feet felt softer now, yielding slightly with each step. He glanced down and froze. The asphalt wasn't smooth. It was textured. Shallow ridges ran through it, uneven and organic, like the grain of skin. Embedded near the sunken tire were pale fragments, too white, too curved to be stones. Bone. He backed away slowly. Mara stood beside the car, staring at the guardrail. Her fingers traced something etched in the metal, deep enough that rust had gathered in the grooves. Names. Dozens of them. Some were neatly carved, others looked scratched in a hurry, letters jagged and uneven. Lena, Marcus, Evelyn, Tommy. Ellie peered over her shoulder. "Why are there so many?" Mara swallowed. "Because people wanted to be remembered." Farther down the road, more cars waited. Some were clustered together, as if drawn to the same stopping point. Others sat alone, half swallowed by the forest, branches threading through open windows. Suitcases lay torn open on the ground, their contents stiff with mildew, photographs bleached white, phones cracked and dark. Jonah kicked at something and yelped. It was a rib. Fused into the asphalt, curved upward like the edge of a buried smile. "No one left," the whisper came again, clearer now, threaded through the silence like a remembered phrase. Mara pressed her hands over her ears. "Stop saying that!" But the road didn't listen.
The bones weren't old. Some still bore scraps of fabric, jackets, shirts, a faded hoodie that made Jonah's throat tighten. Others were newer, the outlines beneath the asphalt disturbingly distinct, as though the road had only just finished absorbing them. Daniel accelerated. The cars and bones eventually thinned, then vanished altogether, leaving the road bare again, smooth, innocent. For a moment, relief fluttered weakly in Daniel's chest. Maybe they had passed the worst of it. Then Ellie spoke. "Dad," she said softly, "why is our name on the guardrail?" Daniel slammed the brakes. Behind them, etched into the metal in fresh, bright scratches, were 4 names: Daniel, Mara, Ellie, Jonah. No one left, only stayed, and the road, patient as ever, waited for them to understand what that truly meant.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. The Road is Learning You. The road changed its tactics. After the names on the guardrail, after the bones beneath the asphalt, Daniel expected escalation, something loud, something violent. Instead, the road softened, the forest thinned, the headlights reached farther, the oppressive closeness eased, just enough to feel intentional. Relief crept in, unwelcome and dangerous. "That's better," Jonah said cautiously. No one answered him. The radio clicked on by itself. Daniel flinched, fingers tightening on the wheel. He hadn't touched the dial. Static filled the car, then thinned, resolving into a voice so faint it almost slipped past them. "And that's why you always check the oil before a long drive." Daniel's breath caught. It was his father's voice. Not an imitation, not something similar, the exact cadence, the same half-amused impatience, the advice he used to give on road trips when Daniel was a boy, before everything else went wrong. Mara saw the change in his face. "Daniel?" He didn't answer. The smell of motor oil and old leather flooded the car, vivid enough to sting his eyes. For a heartbeat, he wasn't here. He was 12 years old again, sitting in the passenger seat of a truck that rattled like it might fall apart, listening to a man who believed roads led somewhere. The radio cut to static. The smell vanished. Daniel swallowed hard. "Did you hear that?" Mara nodded slowly. "Yes." Before he could ask her what she'd heard, a new sound drifted through the car, a low, tuneless hum. Ellie stiffened. It was a lullaby. Not any lullaby, her lullaby, the one Mara used to hum when Ellie was small and afraid of the dark, the one Ellie hadn't heard in years. The sound came from outside. Ellie pressed her hands over her ears. "Make it stop!" Mara twisted in her seat, scanning the trees. Her chest ached. She could smell baby powder and warm blankets, could feel the weight of a much smaller child against her shoulder. The road fed the memory gently, coaxingly. "You used to sing that," Ellie whispered. Mara's voice shook. "I know." The hum faded. Jonah laughed nervously. Okay, that's messed up." The road stretched ahead, smooth and dark, its surface gleaming faintly. Daniel realized with a chill that had nothing to do with the cold that it was no longer reshaping itself randomly. It was responding. The air filled with another smell, cigarette smoke and rain. Jonah's stomach dropped. He saw a flash of a flickering porch light, heard his uncle's voice calling his name, the way he used to before things got bad. For a moment, he felt the reckless hope of being wanted, of being understood. Then the porch light went out. The smell curdled into rot. Jonah gagged. "That's not fair," he muttered. Hours passed, though outside the night stayed the same. Each of them fell into their own silence,
caught in private loops of memory and sensation. The road offered no single horror, no shared threat they could face together. Instead, it isolated them within themselves, presenting fragments carefully chosen to weaken resistance. The road doesn't hunt, it studies. Daniel felt it most clearly when the road straightened completely, stretching into a long, uninterrupted line. No curves, no obstacles, just distance. He felt a sudden irrational urge to accelerate, to finish something. The sensation startled him enough that he eased off the gas. The urge faded, replaced by a dull ache behind his eyes. "It wants us to make choices," Mara said quietly. Daniel nodded. "It's seeing what we'll do." Ahead, a shape materialized at the edge of the headlights, a figure standing on the shoulder. Mara gasped. "Is that—" The woman looked exactly like Mara's sister. Same coat, same tired posture, same scar along the jawline from a childhood fall. She raised her head. Her eyes were wrong, too reflective, catching the light like an animal's. "Don't stop," Daniel said immediately. The figure smiled sadly and stepped back into the trees, dissolving into shadow. Ellie burst into tears. "It looked like Aunt Sarah." I know, Mara whispered, heart pounding. The road absorbed the moment, adjusted itself again, the asphalt subtly retexturing beneath the tires. Daniel finally understood the pattern. The road wasn't trying to scare them away. It was trying to understand what would keep them. Familiarity, guilt, regret, longing. Each illusion tested a different weakness, cataloging responses, refining its approach. The forest grew quieter, if that was possible. Even the oppressive silence seemed curated now, leaving space for thoughts to echo. Jonah stared at the floor. "If it knows us, does that mean it knows how this ends?" Mara didn't answer. Daniel slowed as the road dipped sharply ahead, vanishing into a darker stretch where the headlights struggled to reach. A faint sound drifted upward from below, voices overlapping, murmuring names, their names. The car crested the dip. Below, the road widened into something like a clearing, its surface marked with countless impressions, footprints, tire tracks, handprints, layered so densely they erased one another. At the center stood a sign, newly erected, its metal bright and unweathered. No directions, just words. Learned. Daniel felt the weight of the road's attention settle fully on them, and for the first time he wondered not how to escape, but what the road would decide to do with what it had learned.
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. Escape makes it worse. Daniel tried to turn around. The decision came suddenly, sharp and undeniable, like a reflex finally allowed to complete itself. He twisted the wheel hard to the left, tires squealing as the car skidded across the asphalt. For a brief, impossible second, the headlights caught the edge of the road behind them. Relief surged, raw, electric. Then the world lurched. The car jolted, not with impact, but with resistance, as if the road itself had stiffened beneath the tires. The steering wheel fought back, vibrating violently in Daniel's hands. The asphalt rippled, rising just enough to prevent the turn, then smoothed again as the car was forced forward. Straight ahead. The engine screamed. "Daniel, stop!" Mara shied. He slammed the brakes. The car shuddered to a halt, the sudden stillness ringing in their ears. The forest leaned closer, branches creaking softly, as though reacting to the interruption. Daniel's breath came fast and shallow. "It won't let us turn," Jonna laughed once, brittle and humorless. "So that's new." Behind them, the road stretched on, unchanged, pristine, exactly like the path ahead, as if they had never tried to leave. They drove again, slower now. The road had changed. Cracks split the asphalt, branching outward like veins. The surface sagged in places, creating shallow depressions that tugged at the tires. The air grew thicker, humid, carrying the sharp scent of decay layered over the familiar damp earth. Ellie winced. It hurts to breathe. Mara reached back, brushing her daughter's hair. Her hand came away trembling. "We're okay," she said, though the words felt increasingly hollow. They weren't okay. Daniel's hands ached constantly now, fingers stiff and swollen, as if he'd been gripping the wheel for days without rest. His eyes burned. Every blink felt like an effort. The road looped again. Not the obvious repetition from before. This time it returned them to places they recognized by damage. The sunken tire, the bent guardrail, the cluster of abandoned cars. Only now, everything was worse. Rust had spread like an infection. Cars had collapsed further into the road, their frames partially submerged. Bones protruded higher from the asphalt, more numerous, their pale curves catching the headlights. Mara covered her mouth. It wasn't like this. Daniel nodded grimly. It's reacting. They passed the mile marker. 17. Cracked down the middle now, the number barely legible. Jonna shifted in his seat, wincing. "My leg hurts." Mara turned. "What do you mean?" He lifted his pant leg. A long scrape ran along his shin, raw and angry looking, though none of them remembered how it got there. It hadn't been bleeding before. Now it oozed sluggishly, the blood dark and thick. Mara tore a strip from a towel, wrapping it carefully. Her fingers brushed the wound, and Jonna hissed. "That should have healed by now," she whispered. Hours passed, though outside the night stayed the same. Fatigue settled deep into their bones. Not the normal tiredness of a long drive, but something heavier, more invasive. Their thoughts dulled, reactions slowed. Even fear became harder to sustain. The road thrived on that. Daniel tried again later, waiting for a straight stretch, easing the car into a careful U-turn. This time, the asphalt buckled sharply, throwing the car sideways. Mara cried out as her shoulder slammed into the door. When the car settled, the road behind them had narrowed, its edges frayed and crumbling into darkness. Ahead, it widened invitingly. Every escape attempt fed it. Mara's shoulder bruised quickly, swelling beneath her jacket. She flexed her arm and winced. "It's not healing," she said quietly. "It feels wrong." Ellie stared at her own hands. The skin looked pale, stretched too tight. "I'm tired. I feel like I've been awake forever." Daniel felt it too, a pressure behind his eyes, a slow ache spreading through his chest. His heartbeat felt labored, as if the road were taxing his body the same way the road taxed the car. They tried stopping again, hoping rest might help. The moment the engine cut, the silence surged. Not emptiness, expectation. The road beneath the car softened, sagging slightly, like warm tar. Daniel restarted the engine immediately, heart pounding. The asphalt hardened again, disappointed. "Don't stop," Jonna said hoarsely. "It likes that." They drove on, the road looping them back once more, this time to the clearing with the learned sign. The sign had changed. Rust streaked its surface. Beneath the word were new marks, tallies scratched deep into the metal. One for each of them. Ellie began to cry softly. Mara pulled her close, though her own strength was fading. Daniel stared ahead, the truth settling in with brutal clarity. The road punished resistance. It rewarded compliance. Every escape attempt reshaped it, strengthened it, gave it more material to work with. Injuries lingered, fatigue deepened, the landscape decayed in response to defiance. Every escape attempt fed it. Ahead, the road sloped downward into another stretch of darkness, deeper than before. The forest on either side pressed close, branches arching overhead like ribs. Mara squeezed Daniel's arm. If fighting it makes it worse, what happens if we stop fighting? Daniel didn't answer. He eased his foot off the brake and let the car roll forward. The road, pleased, smoothed itself beneath them. And somewhere deep within its endless length, something shifted, preparing for the next lesson.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. Someone has to stay. The figures appeared at the edge of the road just as the forest thinned again. At first, Daniel thought they were illusions, another test, another memory wearing a borrowed face. They stood too still, clustered near a collapsed guardrail where the asphalt dipped and sagged. 3 of them, 2 adults and a child. They didn't flicker, they didn't dissolve when the headlights caught them. They waved. Daniel slowed despite himself. "Don't," Jonah whispered. "Please don't stop." Mara's voice was hoarse. "They're real." The car rolled to a halt. The air outside felt heavier than before, thick with the smell of old clothes and old sweat. The people approached cautiously, hands visible, movements stiff with exhaustion rather than fear. The woman spoke first. "You shouldn't have taken this road." Her voice cracked on the words, as if she'd said them too many times. Daniel nodded weakly. "We know." The man beside her looked older than he probably was, his face deeply lined, eyes dulled by something beyond sleeplessness. "How long have you been here?" he asked. Daniel hesitated. "I don't know." The woman laughed softly. "That's how it starts." They introduced themselves, names spoken quickly, as if they were afraid to linger on them. The child stayed close, fingers tangled in the woman's coat, eyes fixed on the road. "We've been here longer than you," the woman said, "long enough to learn the rules." Mara stepped out of the car, joints aching as she straightened. "What rules?" The man looked down at the asphalt beneath his feet. It bore faint impressions, as though it remembered him intimately. He said, "The road needs balance. It takes people, but it also lets people go." Ellie frowned. "Then why are you still here?" Silence stretched. The woman met Mara's gaze. "Because it's never free." They led the family a short distance off the road, to a shallow depression where the forest opened into a small, unnatural clearing. The ground there was firmer, less responsive, a temporary mercy. "This is as far as it lets us stop," the man explained. "Any longer and it starts to sink." Daniel's heart pounded. "You said it lets people go." The woman nodded. "Sometimes, if it's paid." Mara's breath caught. "Paid with what?" The child finally spoke. "Someone." The word landed heavily between them. "The road is paid in people," the woman said quietly. They explained in fragments, voices overlapping, each sentence clearly rehearsed through repetition. The road took travelers who entered without purpose beyond escape. It learned them, tested them, weakened them, and when enough had gathered, it demanded a balance. One stays, the rest can pass. Jonah shook his head. That's not how anything works." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "It is here." Mara backed away, shaking her head. "You're lying. You're trying to trick us." The woman flinched. "We tried to trick ourselves first." She rolled up her sleeve. Beneath the skin, dark lines traced downward, branching like roots. The flesh looked fused, immobile. "It's already started, for all of us," she said. Daniel stared. He could feel it too now, a faint stiffness in his own limbs, a subtle resistance when he shifted his weight. Ellie clutched Mara's hand. "Mom!" The child in the group watched them with a hollow expression. "My dad stayed. That's why we're still here.
The road said it wasn't enough. The woman closed her eyes. It wanted more. Daniel felt something tear inside him, not fear, but understanding. "How does it choose?" he asked. The man shrugged. "It doesn't. You do." A distant sound rolled through the forest, a low, grinding shift, like stone moving against stone. The road was adjusting. "It knows we're talking about this," the woman said urgently. "You don't have much time." Mara grabbed Daniel's arm. "We're not doing this. We'll find another way." The man's expression softened, pitying. He said, "Every escape attempt fed it. You know that now." The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, the asphalt nearby darkening, softening. The woman stepped back. "Decide quickly." Daniel looked at his family, at Ellie's wide, terrified eyes, at Jonah's forced bravado, at Mara's trembling resolve. The road waited. Somewhere behind them, the clearing narrowed, the forest inching closer. Daniel realized the cruelest part of the bargain. The road didn't choose who stayed. It made you choose who you loved least, or who you loved enough to sacrifice. As the ground shuddered again, the woman whispered the truth that sealed their fate. No one leaves untouched. And the road, patient and hungry, leaned in to hear their answer.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. The Road Takes Shape. The decision lingered unspoken. They never said it aloud, not then. The road didn't need words. It felt the hesitation, the fracture forming between them, and responded the only way it knew how. It began to change. The first crack split the asphalt with a sound like skin tearing, not sharp, wet. A shallow fissure opened beneath the headlights, then slowly closed again, the surface knitting itself together in uneven ridges. Ellie screamed. Fog rose from the road, thin at first, then thicker, curling around the tires and seeping through the seams of the car doors. It carried a smell Daniel recognized with a sick jolt, warm iron and damp earth, like a grave disturbed too soon. "The road is," Mara began. "Is alive," Jonah finished, his voice hollow. They drove forward because the road behind them no longer existed. Where the clearing had been, there was only forest now, dense, impenetrable, trees pressed so tightly together that even light failed to penetrate. The asphalt narrowed, then widened again, pulsing subtly beneath the tires. Breathing. The road was breathing. Daniel felt it through the steering wheel, each slow expansion, each tired contraction. His hands trembled, joints stiffening further, as though his body were beginning to mirror the road's own slow, relentless movements. Ahead, the fog thinned just enough to reveal shapes. Faces stared out from the trees. Not carved, not grown, pressed there. Human features stretched across bark, eyes closed, mouths half open in expressions of frozen effort. Some looked peaceful, others screamed silently, their features distorted by the grain of the wood. Ellie buried her face in Mara's coat. "Don't let me look." Mara held her tight, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. Jonah leaned forward, morbid curiosity overcoming fear. "They're watching us." "No, they're remembering," Daniel shook his head. "The land remembers who it consumes." The phrase rose unbidden in his mind, settling there with terrible certainty. Hands emerged next. They broke the surface of the road like swimmers reaching for air, pale, rigid, fingers splayed. Some twitched as the car passed, reacting to the vibration. Others were fused in place, their wrists swallowed by asphalt that gleamed wetly around them. The road dipped sharply, forcing Daniel to slow.
The surface grew uneven, ridged with hardened folds that resembled scar tissue. Mara cried out as pain lanced through her shoulder again. The bruise had darkened to an unnatural purple, veins branching outward from it like cracks in glass. "It's spreading," she whispered. "It's not just hurting me anymore. It's rewriting me." Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. The fog thickened, then thinned, revealing more evidence of what the road had taken over time. Shoes embedded heel first, a backpack half absorbed, its fabric stretched and stiff, a handprint that looked disturbingly fresh, its edges still soft. Daniel's chest tightened. He recognized the jacket, one he'd seen earlier among the abandoned cars. Now it was part of the road, the zipper fused shut, the sleeves disappearing into the asphalt like veins. "The road isn't killing people, it's keeping them," Jonah said quietly. Ahead, the forest opened again, but not into a clearing, into a corridor. The trees arched overhead, their branches woven together, forming something like ribs. Fog pooled low, drifting in and out in slow breaths. The road beneath them glistened, textured now with raised lines that pulsed faintly. Faces appeared in the fog too, less defined, more fluid. They formed briefly, then dissolved, expressions flickering through fear, relief, resignation. Ellie whimpered. "They look tired." Daniel felt his own exhaustion deepen, his muscles heavy, his thoughts sluggish. The road fed at that too, on surrender, on the slow erosion of resistance. "The land remembers who it consumes." The words echoed again, louder this time. They reached a stretch where the road widened unnaturally, its surface scarred with overlapping impressions, bodies layered upon bodies, their outlines visible beneath the surface like fossils in stone. Mara gagged. "Daniel, I can't." He pulled the car to a stop before she finished the sentence. The road beneath them softened immediately, sagging like warm clay. The engine revved uselessly as Daniel tried to keep them steady. "Don't stop, please," Jonah pleaded. Daniel hit the gas. The car lurched forward, the road hardening reluctantly beneath them, as if disappointed. They drove on in silence, each mile revealing more of the road's true nature. It was no longer hiding what it was. It didn't need to. The fog parted ahead, revealing a rise, a gentle hill, crowned by a shape that Daniel's heart stuttered. A man stood there. Not an illusion, not a memory. A man, partially fused into the road from the waist down, his legs swallowed by asphalt that had hardened around him like a cast. His face was gaunt but alert, eyes tracking the car as it approached. As they passed, he lifted one arm, slowly, with great effort. His mouth moved. Mara leaned forward, desperate. What did he say? Daniel swallowed. He said, "It remembers. The land remembers who it consumes." Behind them, the road closed the gap, smoothing over their tracks. Ahead, it stretched onward, shaped now by countless lives, ready to claim the next. And the road, having shown them exactly what staying meant, waited to see who would belong to it forever.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 9. You're Not Leaving the Same. The road ended without ceremony. No sign, no threshold, no moment of triumph. It simply loosened its grip. Daniel noticed it first in the way the steering wheel stopped fighting him. The asphalt smoothed beneath the tires, not with that eager breathing tension, but with something closer to indifference. The fog thinned. The trees pulled back,
no longer pressing inward like clenched teeth. Light appeared ahead. Real light. Ellie lifted her head from Mara's shoulder. "Dad?" Daniel didn't answer. His throat had closed too tightly. The road straightened, then widened, then merged seamlessly into a familiar stretch of cracked county pavement. Faded lines, a dented guardrail, a rusted sign welcoming travelers to a town Daniel vaguely recognized. The engine sounded normal again. The silence lifted. Birdsong drifted in through the open window. They had left the road. Jonah laughed, once sharp and hysterical. "We did it! We actually—" His voice cut off as Daniel slammed the brakes. In the rearview mirror, the road was gone. Not hidden, not receding. Gone entirely. Replaced by a wall of ordinary trees, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. Mara started to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, shuddering release as her body finally accepted that the pressure had lifted. Ellie whispered, "Is it over?" Daniel forced himself to nod. Yes. The lie tasted bitter. They drove into town in stunned silence. Gas station lights glared too brightly. A convenience store hummed with fluorescent normalcy. A digital clock over the door read a date that made Mara stop walking. "This isn't right," she said faintly. The clerk looked up, irritation flickering across his face. "You folks okay?" "What year is it?" Daniel asked. The man frowned. "You serious?" "Please." The clerk sighed. 2026. Mara staggered back as if struck. They had entered the road 3 days ago. Outside, nearly 5 years had passed. Records filled in the gaps cruelly and efficiently. Their car had been found abandoned near the forest edge years earlier. Search efforts had lasted weeks, then months, then quietly stopped. They had been declared dead. The world had moved on. The road had not. That night, in a borrowed motel room, Daniel lay awake listening to his family breathe. The sounds comforted him and terrified him. Something was wrong. Mara's shoulder was no longer bruised. The skin there looked smooth, unmarked. But when she slept, her arm remained unnaturally still, as if it no longer quite belonged to her. Ellie didn't dream. She lay staring at the ceiling, eyes dry and reflective, listening to something no one else could hear. And Jonah woke screaming. Every time he slept, he clawed at his legs, insisting the floor was soft, that it was pulling him down. In the mirror, his eyes looked older somehow, the reckless spark dulled to a flat, exhausted shine. Daniel avoided mirrors altogether, because sometimes, just for a second, his reflection lagged behind. Memories began to contradict themselves. Ellie remembered songs Mara never sung. Jonah recalled conversations that hadn't happened. Daniel found himself nostalgic for places he'd never been. Long stretches of road that smelled like iron and rain. And sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could feel the steering wheel again, the resistance, the breathing. They returned to the forest once, not to search, just to stand at the edge. There was no sign of the road, no unnatural silence, just trees, birds, sunlight filtering through leaves. Ellie tilted her head. "It's still there." Daniel's heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "It knows us now." That night, Daniel dreamed of the man fused into the asphalt, of faces in trees, of hands reaching up, not begging, but welcoming. He woke with the words etched into his thoughts like a warning carved too late. Leaving doesn't mean surviving. Some part of them had stayed behind, and some part of the road had come with them. Daniel lay awake until morning, listening for a sound he could never quite unhear. The distant, patient stretch of a road that had learned exactly how to let them go, and exactly how to call them back.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. The road is still there. Years passed, not for the road, but for the world that pretended the road did not exist. Daniel learned to live with the echoes, with the way certain smells, wet asphalt after rain, overheated engines, rust, could hollow him out without warning, with the way his family moved through life as if slightly out of phase, always half a step behind the moment they were in. They never spoke about the road in detail, not really. Naming it felt dangerous, like calling into a dark room and waiting for something to answer. But the signs were everywhere. Ellie stopped drawing people. Her sketchbooks filled instead with long black lines, forests pressing inward, shapes beneath surfaces. When teachers asked, she said she liked landscapes because they remembered things. Jonah grew restless around highways. He avoided driving whenever he could, but when he did, he took the longest routes possible. Detours didn't bother him. Shortcuts did. Mara healed, but not completely. Her shoulder worked, moved, functioned, yet sometimes her arm went numb for hours at a time, as if the signal between thought and flesh had been interrupted. During those moments, she would go very still and listen. Daniel never returned to the forest again. He didn't need to. The road followed him in quieter ways, in dreams mostly, in moments between waking and sleep, when his mind loosened its grip on linear time. He would feel the steering wheel again, its subtle resistance, its faint warmth. He would sense distance stretching ahead of him, endlessly accommodating, endlessly patient. The road did not call loudly. It did not have to. Elsewhere, far from Daniel and his family, a man sat behind the wheel of an aging sedan, drumming his fingers impatiently against the dashboard. The GPS flickered uselessly, recalculating for the 5th time in as many minutes. His daughter groaned from the back seat. "We're going to be late." "I know," he snapped, rubbing his eyes. "I'm working on it." Rain fell in a steady, irritating drizzle, blurring the trees into dark streaks. The highway stretched on, clogged and unmoving, taillights glowing red like a warning no one listened to anymore. Then he saw it. A narrow road branching off to the right. No sign, no traffic, just clean asphalt disappearing into trees that looked darker than they should have in the rain. He slowed. "That wasn't on the map," his wife said. He frowned. She was right. The GPS showed nothing but forest. Still, something about the road tugged at him. Not familiarity exactly, but possibility. "It'll save time. Probably an old access road." His daughter leaned forward. "Cool, let's take it." The road waited. The rain did not fall beneath its canopy. The air felt calmer there, insulated from the mess of the main road. For a moment, relief settled into the car, gentle and convincing. The tires crossed onto the asphalt. Behind them, the entrance faded, not abruptly, but naturally, like a thought abandoned mid-sentence. The road smoothed itself, pristine and unmarked, its surface unbroken by cracks or scars. No mile markers, no names, no bones pressed beneath the surface. Not yet. It had learned patience. It had learned restraint. Deep beneath the asphalt, impressions lingered, faded, layered, remembered. Not as warnings, but as foundation. The road did not need to display its history. It carried it. The land remembers who it consumes, and it remembers how to begin again. The forest closed in gently, branches knitting overhead. The sky narrowed by degrees too subtle to notice until it was already gone. The driver adjusted his grip on the wheel. "Does this road feel weird to you?" his wife asked. He shook his head. "You're just tired." Ahead, the road stretched just a little further than it should have. In the distance, unseen and unconcerned, something settled its attention on the car. Not hungry, not eager, curious, because someone always needs a shortcut.
This was never a story about a road. It was about what happens when you choose the easier path, when you ignore warning signs because you're tired, when you believe you'll be different from the ones who vanished before you. The road doesn't chase, it doesn't trap, it waits for permission. And every time you choose speed over awareness, comfort over caution, you are already stepping onto it. So the next time something feels wrong but convenient, ask yourself this: what is it asking me to leave behind? If this story followed you, stay with the channel, listen to the next road, and whatever you do, don't take shortcuts.